So do the Dallas Mavericks have a chance of making the playoffs this season? It is tough, because you could make the case that there's legit like 13 or maybe even 14 Western Conference teams that are going for the playoffs. Sorry, Kings fans. And so that, of course, is going to make it pretty damn difficult, but when you have the combination of Dennis Smith, Luka Doncic, some pretty decent wing players in Wesley Matthews and Harrison Barnes, then of course you sign DeAndre Jordan, and then you have Rick Carlisle as your head coach, things are pretty interesting. And I guess we can start with DeAndre Jordan there. Him being coached by Rick Carlisle is huge. At the same time, I don't think DeAndre is like a defensive anchor kind of a player. I think he is a level below that. I don't think he is in the same class of like Gobert and Embiid and Davis when he plays center and those bigs, but he's still a positive piece defensively, I would say. And of course, Carlisle, from his days with Tyson Chandler, knows how to coach defense when he has an athletic big dude. So we should expect this team to be better there. And then Harrison Barnes and Wesley Matthews are both pretty decent defensively. I think Wesley, while he's probably not as good as he was with the Blazers, I think he's recovered enough from the Achilles injury to where he can be like a body on defense for you. And then Barnes is, he's strong. He can defend a few positions, and he should be okay there. Now, as far as how good Doncic and Dennis Smith are defensively year one, I mean, that's a pretty big question. Doncic has good size, but it's a matter of can he just compete, move laterally against NBA perimeter players and all that. We'll have to see. And then another thing with defense is they really shouldn't play Dirk that much. Like, Dirk should really only play like 15 minutes a game. I know he is the face of the franchise and all that, but for the sake of winning basketball games, the dude's just stuck in cement defensively. So, I mean, I guess it's possible you could use him in like the Pau Gasol role of just have him stand near the basket, but then that means that DeAndre is probably not in the game. And, take your pick. DeAndre Jordan moving around the floor or Dirk just standing there in front of the rim. Like, obviously, you're going to take the former in that situation. I guess we can move on to the offense now, because I think this is this has to be dominated by Doncic and Dennis Smith, right? So the question is, can a point guard in his second season and a guard / wing, I have no idea what position Doncic is going to play, but that as a rookie, can you provide winning basketball? Well, I think with Doncic, the passing is going to transition pretty easily. Like, if you can pass overseas, you can pass here, I also think the fact that his three-point shot will probably be better because, number one, he's not going to take as many full-court shots that actually count to knock down his percentage. But also, I'm just going to assume that he's going to be in NBA training staff situations, and as a result, he's going to lose some weight. Because if you look at him, like, he's a decent athlete, and that's while he probably is like a little bit heavier than you'd ideally want him to be. Like, I do think he could lose like 10 to 15 pounds and maintain his strength, because he does have a bit of like bully ball to him when he's driving, and you don't want him to lose that, but I do think he is sometimes a little too heavy nonetheless, and it's probably because he eats a crap ton of McDonald's. And that's a real thing that I've heard. That's not just me talking. So, another thing about losing weight is it gets more lift on your jumper. It allows you to not get tired as quickly, which could also lead to your three-point percentage improving. And if Doncic is going to have the passing and the outside shot day one, with the way that Carlisle is going to use him, which is going to be pretty creative stuff where it's not just him doing pick and rolls all the time, but he'll be moving off the ball, then that could allow them to have a pretty dynamic offense. I also think if Doncic's shot is there, then between him, Wesley Matthews, Harrison Barnes is shooting, and then DeAndre Jordan's ability to roll and grab alley-oops and do stuff in transition and get offensive rebounds, I think that'll help out Dennis Smith as well, because he'll just have more talent around him than he did last season, So yeah, I think that would be the thing that allows this Mavericks team to be good offensively. It's like, okay, Doncic and Dennis Smith doing their thing, Barnes playing off of it, Matthews spacing the floor. I guess there is a fear that Harrison Barnes is not going to be totally happy with suddenly being the number 3 guy on this team, because I think, while I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm going to guess that he and Dennis Smith were pretty close last season in terms of shot attempts, usage rate, and all that, with Barnes probably either being ahead of Dennis or, again, pretty close. But now, I think Barnes is going to be going into a more conventional wing role, similar to what he played with the Warriors, and I'm sure he was fine with it on Golden State. But now, after getting his big contract and being the dude, at least for one season here, and when I say the dude, I mean by default, pretty much, now he could be the number 3 guy, and, I mean, there's a chance that he's not okay with it, especially because he loves to take, like, post-up shots and mid-range jumpers, which is not what Carlisle has envisioned for Dennis Smith and Doncic, I have to assume. So there's a chance that that could create an awkward offense sometimes, where the ball is zipping around and then it ends up in Barnes' hands and then he kind of kills the offense. Or he just gets frustrated because he hasn't touched the ball in a few minutes because Doncic and Dennis Smith have just been doing stuff in transition and all that. However, the flip side of this is that he's now playing with 2 very good passers. You know, one passer in Doncic, who I think one day will be an elite playmaker, and then in the case of Dennis Smith, a pretty good one. So he could just get himself a lot of easier shots that way. I mean, maybe he's just getting a bunch of open looks, and these 2 are breaking down the defense, and then Barnes is cutting to the rim or getting open for like corner threes, and he's moving off the ball a little bit more, and then it's totally fine. So I could picture it going well, and you know what? I'm going to predict that it goes more well than it doesn't because of how good of a coach Rick Carlisle is. And so, as a result, I look at this team and I say, okay, while DeAndre isn't an all-world defender, I think he's good enough to give you a pretty decent increase there to where maybe you could creep up into being, you know, one of the top 15 defensive teams, and then offensively, depending on how it goes with, you know, Doncic and Dennis Smith and that dynamic, perhaps you could slowly get it to like number 11 or maybe 12th in offense or so. And at that point, being mid-tier in both things, that can get you into the playoffs, maybe. I mean, you're going to have to get a little lucky with maybe the T-Wolves imploding with all their character issues and the Clippers getting worse because they lost DeAndre and the Nuggets being really bad on defense and, you know, other things, maybe like Conley and Gasol being back together doesn't totally do it for the Grizzlies. Like, you're going to have to get lucky a little bit. But yeah, I could see a world where the Mavericks squeak into the playoffs at like 44, maybe 45 victories. But I could also see the other side, which is, for as exciting and as good as Doncic and Dennis Smith are going to be this season and in the future, it's Dennis's second season, it's Doncic's first year, and it is difficult to contribute to winning when you're that young. You know, it just is. I mean, I know we just saw it with Donovan Mitchell. I know we saw it with Ben Simmons. Their teams were also fantastic defensively, so they got a bit of help there, whereas I don't think this team is going to be on that level defensively. You know, I think I would have to guess that they don't make the playoffs, the Mavericks. That's my prediction, is that they don't make it, but they're a very fun team and could even end up being one of the most fun teams in the league, up there with like Denver or whatever. But hey, the West is tough. I mean, again, I think the only team that doesn't have any real chance here is the Kings. I mean, between Booker and Ayton and Phoenix and Conley and Gasol being healthy again, and the Lakers with LeBron now, and the Clippers are still kind of feisty even though they lost DeAndre. You know, it'll be an interesting conference, but I don't think the Mavs will get in there. So that's it. I gotta talk for a little bit here to get to 10 minutes because apparently that matters. We did it. Alright, I'm done.